Imagine a time long, long ago, even before the Great Pyramids were built in Egypt. In Ireland, nestled in the green landscape of the Boyne Valley, a group of early farmers came together to build something truly extraordinary. This was Newgrange, a massive circular tomb constructed around 3200 BC. It is a marvel of ancient engineering, made from enormous stones and covered with a grassy mound. For thousands of years it has stood as a silent witness to a forgotten world, a place where the sun performs a special trick. On the shortest day of the winter, a single beam of sunlight travels down a long passage and lights up the chamber hidden deep inside. This incredible feature tells us that the people who built it were brilliant astronomers and builders. For many years, historians and archaeologists have wondered about the people who were laid to rest inside this magnificent structure. Who were they? Why were they given such an important burial? The sheer scale of Newgrange, requiring immense effort and organization to construct, suggested that it must have been a place for very special individuals. Early theories imagined that it was the final resting place of powerful kings or queens, the rulers of a society that could command hundreds of people to work on such a grand project. It seemed logical that only the most powerful elite would be honored in such a way, creating a lasting monument to their reign and their family line. The idea of a royal dynasty seemed to fit with what we knew about other ancient civilizations. In many parts of the world, great monuments were built to honor the powerful, separating them from ordinary people even in death. It was easy to look at Newgrange and see a similar story unfolding in ancient Ireland. Perhaps a single family, a kind of prehistoric royal house, held sway over the entire region. These were the people who directed the farming, controlled the resources, and were seen as almost godlike figures. Their tomb was not just a burial place but a symbol of their enduring power, a statement that their family was chosen to lead for generations to come. This vision of ancient Ireland was one of a highly structured society, with a clear division between the rulers and the ruled. The farmers who toiled in the fields would have looked upon Newgrange not just as a sacred site, but as the home of their leaders' spirits. The annual winter solstice event, when the sun pierced the darkness of the tomb, could have been seen as a divine confirmation of the ruling family's special status. It was a compelling story that painted a picture of a society with kings and subjects, a hierarchy that seemed to explain how such a monumental feat of construction was possible. It was a story that, for a long time, seemed to make perfect sense. The mystery of Newgrange took a fascinating turn a few years ago when scientists were able to study the DNA from bones found within the tomb. This technology is like a time machine, allowing us to read the genetic code of people who lived thousands of years ago. One particular discovery from a skull fragment labeled NG10 caused a huge stir. The DNA from this person, a man who lived over 5,000 years ago, showed something very unusual. His parents were extremely closely related, either a parent and child or a brother and sister. This was startling because such relationships are very rare in human history and are often associated with royal families trying to keep their bloodline pure. This single piece of evidence seemed to confirm the old theory of an elite ruling class. Some experts announced that this was proof of a powerful, godlike dynasty that ruled Neolithic Ireland. They compared it to royal families in ancient Egypt or among the Inca, where rulers sometimes married their close relatives to maintain power and a divine status. The man from the NG10 skull fragment was immediately seen as a prehistoric king, the product of a very exclusive and powerful family. It was a sensational finding that made headlines around the world. The story of Newgrange was no longer just about stones and stars, it was about incest, power, and a lost Irish royal family. This interpretation suggested that burial in Newgrange was reserved for a single privileged lineage. It painted a picture of a society that was far from equal. At the top was this family, whose members were considered so special that they were set apart from everyone else, even in their genetic relationships. The rest of the population were seen as their subjects, the ordinary farmers who provided the labor to build these grand tombs, but who would never be buried within them. The idea was that Newgrange was not just a tomb, but a mausoleum for a specific dynasty, a physical marker of their hereditary right to rule over the land and its people. However, science is always about asking new questions and re-examining evidence. While the story of a royal dynasty was exciting, some archaeologists and geneticists felt that it was based on very limited proof. Was a single instance of a close kin union really enough to define an entire social system that lasted for centuries? It was like finding one gold coin and declaring you have discovered a city of gold. Relying on the story of just one individual, even one with such a fascinating genetic history, might be leading us down the wrong path. A new group of researchers decided to look closer, to combine the DNA evidence with all the other clues from the ground. A more recent study, published in 2025, took a much broader look at the evidence and began to challenge the idea of a royal dynasty. The researchers pointed out a major problem. The inside of Newgrange had been disturbed over the centuries. Before archaeologists carefully excavated the site, the bones inside had been moved around, mixed up, and were not in their original positions. This means we cannot be certain that the skull fragment NG10 was originally placed in a position of high honor. It might have been just one of many sets of remains within the chamber, making it difficult to claim it belonged to a supreme ruler based on its location. Furthermore, when scientists analyzed the DNA from all the other human remains found in passage tombs across Ireland, they found something that contradicted the royal family theory. Most of the people buried in these tombs were not closely related at all. Instead, they were distant cousins, perhaps second or third cousins, or even more distantly related. It was very rare to find close family members like parents and children or siblings buried together in the same tomb. If these tombs were family vaults for a ruling dynasty, you would expect to see entire family trees laid to rest together. The evidence showed the opposite was happening. The archaeologists also looked for other signs of a powerful elite, and they came up empty-handed. In societies with kings and queens, you typically find palaces or large rich houses where the rulers lived. You find evidence of them controlling resources, like large storehouses for grain, or having more valuable possessions than everyone else. In Neolithic Ireland, however, there is no such evidence. The houses from this period are all quite small and similar. There are no signs of centralized storage, or any indication that a small group of people controlled all the wealth. Life seemed to be much more modest and equal for everyone. This lack of archaeological evidence for a strict social hierarchy is a crucial piece of the puzzle. It suggests that the society that built Newgrange was not organized with kings at the top and poor farmers at the bottom. Instead, it seems to have been a more cooperative community. People lived in small homesteads, farmed the land, and likely pooled their labor for big projects like building the tombs. The absence of elite settlements or hoards of treasure points away from a system of powerful rulers and towards a society built on collaboration and shared effort, where status may have been earned rather than inherited. So if Newgrange wasn't for a royal family, who was buried there? The new research suggests a much more communal and complex answer. Burial practices in Neolithic Ireland were very different from our own. Today we bury people individually in a specific spot. Back then, it was a long process. The remains of the dead were often left in other places first, perhaps to be disarticulated or cremated. Bones from many different people were then gathered and mixed together before being placed inside the tombs. These tombs were not sealed forever, they were entered again and again over many generations, with new remains being added over time. This practice tells us that the tombs were not for individuals, but for the community. They were collective burial places, repositories for the ancestors of a whole group of people. The mixing of bones from many different individuals, who were only distantly related, suggests that the community wanted to create a shared ancestry. Being buried in Newgrange might not have been about your direct bloodline, but about your connection to the wider community. Perhaps it was reserved for people who had a special role in rituals, or who were respected elders, or who had contributed significantly to the group's life and projects, like the building of the tomb itself. The genetic connections that do exist between people in the tombs, even if distant, paint a picture of a large, interconnected social network that stretched across the island. Kinship was important, but it was likely broader and more flexible than a simple family tree. It was a kinship built through shared work, shared rituals, and a shared sense of place. The monumental tombs like Newgrange were the focal points of this community, places where people gathered to honor their collective ancestors and strengthen their social bonds. They were symbols of unity and cooperation, not of division and power. This new understanding transforms our view of Ireland's first farmers. They were not just subjects toiling for powerful kings, They were a sophisticated and cooperative society that worked together to achieve incredible things. They built monuments that aligned with the stars and created complex rituals to honor their dead as a collective. The story of Newgrange is not one of a single powerful family, but of a community bound together by kinship, collaboration, and a shared spiritual world. It teaches us that there are many different ways to build a society, and that the grandest structures can be born from cooperation rather than command.